This is a bonus episode for my new Vampire the Masquerade Redemption series, exploring the instruction manual. I'll even be reading the short story Redemption near the beginning. I enjoyed instruction manuals a lot as a kid. Read and reread through quite a few. The XCOM Apocalypse one comes to mind. Vampire the Masquerade Redemption really stuck with me. It was my first exposure to the world of darkness. And Chapter 6 was particularly evocative and stuck with me for years until the first time I ever played VtM. Redemption. A sliver of moon broke through the gray clouds as Kristoff reached the top of the hill. The night wind cut through his battered armor, chilling his overheated body. His limbs ached as they never had before, and cried out for rest. But he had not prayed all day, and would not let his body collapse until he had done so. The Crusaders of the Order of the Sword Brethren had been on a forced march since dawn, chasing the faster, lighter armored barbarians. Sir Cuthbert had reluctantly allowed them to stop only when nightfall made further travel impossible. After pitching their tents, the Crusaders gratefully collapsed onto their straw mats, but Kristoff did not. He had a need greater than sleep. Friar Bertrand's energetic orations against the barbarians were stirring, but his perfunctory prayers gave little consolation to the 18-year-old Crusader. The Savior had decreed that Christians pray alone in their private chambers, and Kristoff had diligently followed that stricture every day since childhood. But there were no private chambers in the wastelands of Moravia. Moravia? Yeah. So the desolate, wind-swept hilltop would have to suffice. Kristoff paused at the peak of the hill and looked down. From his perch, he could see the entire Crusader camp etched in cold moonlight. A dozen watchfires glowed reassuringly around the perimeter, warding off the terrors of the night. Most of the Crusaders slumbered, bone-weary from the day's forced march. Even some of the watch dozed fitfully at their posts. All was quiet, except for a few unarmored serfs who scurried about the camp, hauling sacks of grain, digging a shallow cesspit, and preparing for the morning meal. For the first time that day, Kristoff felt safe. He pulled off his heavy battered helmet and let it clatter to the ground. The cold night air lashed his long brown hair, which was matted and dripping wet. He rubbed his eyes with a mailed fist, wiping away rust and sweat mingled with the grit of the road. His armor was battered and in need of repair. The white cloth over his mail hauberk was torn in many places and streaked with dull, brown, dried blood. But the crimson cross across the chest was still as bright and proud as the day he first wore it. His limbs ached from weeks of marching, but Kristoff was not ready to rest. He drew his broadsword from its scabbard, plunged the tip into the crust of the dry earth, and knelt before it. He pressed his feverish brow into the handle, closed his eyes, and prayed quietly, "Our Father, who art in heaven." But his mind did not stay on the prayer. The tension that had coiled around his warrior's spine slowly melted away. And as the tension ebbed, a flood of memories rose up, unbidden and unwelcome. In his 16 years, Kristoff had never struck a blow in anger. In the little French village of St. Clair, he had raced against, wrestled, and mock-dueled every lad and able-bodied man. He won most of his bouts, and always emerged unscathed, as if protected from on high, until the day a wild boar had thundered across the village green. The boar charged the villagers, who scattered before it like geese, jabbering in terror as the boar snorted and slashed. 2 watchmen panicked and fled, dropping their hatchets as they ran past slower-moving villagers. Kristoff easily outran the massive pig, but a scream more piercing than all the others cut through him like a razor. He turned and saw that the boar had trampled a small child, who lay crying on the green. A white-hot fury ignited in Kristoff's chest. He stopped, and held his ground as the slower villagers ran past him. In a moment, the village green was empty except for the child, the boar, and Kristoff. The massive pig wheeled to survey the damage it had done. It snorted with satisfaction and lowered its yellowed tusks to charge the screaming child again. Then it noticed Kristoff, now very alone on the green. It charged in Kristoff's direction, testing the lone, impudent creature who did not fly from his wrath. Kristoff quickly stepped sideways toward a hut, narrowly evading the creature. The boar sped past him and hurtled back around the green. Satisfied that Kristoff no longer defied him, the boar returned his attention to the squalling child. Kristoff grabbed a sharpened tent pole from the hut and approached the child. The boar snorted with rage, stomped the grass, and charged Kristoff, determined to punish this act of defiance. Kristoff crouched low, planted the butt end of the spike in the ground, and braced against it. He faced the beast and lowered the pole toward its onrushing jaws. The spike snapped like dry kindling as the boar toppled Kristoff and gored his right shoulder. The beast snarled a blast of hot, foul breath in frustration as it realized that it had charged open-mouthed right into the tent spike. It stomped its hooves and ripped at Kristoff's chest, tusks inches from Kristoff's face. But the spike had torn through the boar's gaping mouth and shattered its neck bone. Its monstrous head glowered. I end up saying glowered a whole lot. I like that version, much like how I like withered instead of wyvern. I continue. With impotent, disbelieving rage as the light slowly faded from its eyes. The villagers poured into the green, cheering. They hauled the monster off the gasping and bleeding Kristoff. The village elders held a week-long festival in Kristoff's honor, and for those 7 days, he was great as King David. Kristoff, God hath given thee a great gift of courage, the elders said. Thou art meant for greater glory than life as a freeman baker or cobbler. Perhaps thou shalt become the youngest village elder. The vainglory felt sweet, but also embarrassed him. The lasses adored him and lavished him with honeyed praise. Kristoff, thou art the bravest man in Christendom. Blessed is she thou takest to wife. The lads also admired him. Kristoff, thou shouldest fight for the glory of God. Go far from St. Clair, join the crusade, and bring fame to our village. But Kristoff barely heard any of them. All he could see was the massive, oppressive face of the beast inches from his face. Angry, hateful, fire in its dead eyes. Kristoff shook his head to dispel the memory and focused again on his prayer. He was anxious to finish and eager to sleep. He continued quietly, Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. In his 17 years, Kristoff had never killed a man. The hot sun beat down on him and a roaring filled his ears, drowning out the angry clash of steel on steel. Sparks flew before his eyes, and his head spun around as the barbarian's axe struck his helmet from the right. Kristoff was certain he was dead. He prayed that the Lord would find his soul in the midst of the battlefield wasteland, and blindly gave his sword one final thrust. The pommel rattled painfully in his hand as his blade bit deeply into flesh and struck hard bone. The barbarian collapsed like a straw man at a harvest festival and lay still. The ringing in Kristoff's ears subsided, and his vision slowly cleared. He tugged at his sword, which had pierced the barbarian's heart, but the weapon did not budge. It was caught on the barbarian's ribs and would not dislodge. Kristoff gripped the hilt with both hands and yanked furiously. The barbarian's corpse vaulted upwards as if rising from the dead. The shattered chest bones groaned like the hinges of hell and snapped open as the sword burst free. The broken body crashed back to the earth, shuddered, and lay still. but one hand stuck straight up, as though begging Kristoff for absolution. Kristoff stared down into the dead man's hollow eyes. The piercing black pupils stared back with the same accusing, disbelieving look as the boar. Kristoff looked away, but knew the sight would never leave him for all his days. Again, Kristoff tried to shake off the memory and focused on his prayer, but he felt ill at ease and the prayer brought him no comfort. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from... His attention drifted from the prayer, but not to another memory. He opened his eyes and peered down to the hill to the troops slumbering below. The camp was quiet, except for a few serfs finishing their chores. Though they carried heavy packs that weighed as much as a crusader's arms and armor, they were expected to labor while the troops slept. All seemed well. Kristoff was closing his eyes again when he realized that a guard outside Sir Cuthbert's tent was swaying drunkenly at his post. Kristoff opened his eyes and watched as a small serf in a hood and tunic whispered into the ear of the tall guard. The guard fell backward, nearly toppling into Sir Cuthbert's tent. The short serf effortlessly pulled the large man away from the tent and quietly lowered his body to the ground. Then the serf darted toward the guard at the opening of Sir Cuthbert's tent. Kristoff pulled the sword from the ground as he leapt to his feet. He tried to cry out, but no sound emerged from his mouth. He charged down the hill as the small serf gently lowered the second guard to the ground. Weary crusaders glowered, wink, at Kristoff as he stormed past them. Only when the serf disappeared inside Sir Cuthbert's tent did Kristoff finally find his voice. "Alarm! Alarm!" he shouted breathlessly, bursting into the tent. The serf was already crouching over Sir Cuthbert, who lay atop his straw pallet, dead to the world. Kristoff's sword flashed in the torchlight and crashed down on the serf's head, where it bit deeply with a satisfying crunch. The skull caved in and a chunk of bone and gristle flew across the tent. The serf did not fall. Instead, he turned and glowered, wink, at Kristoff with eyes that were black pools of hate. Hate! Kristoff froze. For a moment, all was still in the tent as the serf locked eyes on him. Dead eyes, full of hate. Then the serf snarled and clawed at Kristoff, with long, cracked fingernails encrusted with filth. Kristoff dimly noticed his sword bouncing silently off the hard earth at his feet, and his right arm suddenly felt cold and far away. The serf paused to wipe his eyes clean of the blood that flowed freely from the gaping head wound Kristoff had delivered. The serf crinkled his ashen face into a wicked leer. His thin, dry lips peeled back to reveal long, glistening yellow teeth. The yellowed fangs flashed in the torchlight as he silently lunged toward Kristoff's unarmored head. The stillness abruptly shattered with a roar as shouting men and clanking mail burst into the tent. The serf unlocked his grasp on Kristoff's arm and pushed him toward the charging crusaders. Kristoff stumbled backward, blocking their path. The serf howled a hideous, high-pitched snarl and turned, shredding the back of the tent with a sweep of his razor-sharp talons. He bounded through the hole and ran, toppling a crusader who stood in his path. Kristoff found he could suddenly move again and charged after the serf. He ran headlong through the dark past groggy troops rising from their deep and troubled sleep. An uproar swept through the camp. Finally, Kristoff slowed. He peered into the darkness, but to no avail. The creature had vanished into the chill of the night. Fear replaced exhaustion in the hearts of the sword brethren, and banished all hope of sleep as word of the blood-mad devil raced from man to man. Two of Sir Cuthbert's officers found the shivering Kristoff and led him back to Sir Cuthbert's tattered tent, which flapped in the night wind, despite the efforts of several serfs to mend it. The tent was now ringed with a barrier of Cuthbert's retainers, who muttered angrily to one another, debating the most fitting punishment for the serf once they caught him. Sir Cuthbert's steward parted them and beckoned for Kristoff to enter. The retainers stepped aside to admit Cuthbert's officers. They scowled suspiciously at Kristoff, who appeared indistinguishable from any other young frontline soldier. Inside the tent, the white-haired company Empiric was examining a pale Sir Cuthbert, who looked weary, but solid as granite. At length, the old man gruffly announced, "'Tis the will of God that Sir Cuthbert be delivered from the devil's grasp. He is whole." The officers roared with relief and toasted his health, but an impatient Sir Cuthbert pushed past them and strode out of the tent. Outside, the anxious troops erupted in cheers. With an abrupt wave of his hand, Sir Cuthbert cut them off, and the camp fell silent. Sir Cuthbert surveyed his men for a long moment before speaking. "Saved," he hoarsely bellowed, "by the grace of God!" The troops cheered again, louder. Christoph tried to follow Sir Cuthbert out of the tent, but the Empiric blocked his path. The old man peeled back the blood-soaked mail from Christoph's right forearm and gripped his bicep to staunch the blood flow. He forced Christoph to sit on a barrel. "The demon unleashed a torrent of blood from thy arm," the old man scolded, pouring wine over the jagged claw marks. "Thy very life leaks out upon the uncaring soil." He gently rinsed grit from the wound and wrapped it tightly in fresh linen. "Disturb not this dressing," he said sternly. When he finished, the Empiric retrieved Christoph's broadsword from the ground. The old man scowled as he handed Christoph the weapon, saying, "When next thou art inclined to chase the spawn of hell, pray remember to bring thy sword." And just for a moment, Christoph thought he saw a hint of smile on the sour face of the old man who had witnessed so much suffering and death. Outside the tent, Friar Bertrand intoned, "In the name of our Lord and God Jesus Christ, for his glory and for the exaltation of his holy faith. Amen. The barbarian dogs felt the sting of God's wrath on our swords, and they fear us. They flee our wrath like coward apostrophe S. They cannot win by honest force of arms, so they have sent a devil to our camp to slay your lord and master Sir Cuthbert. But the Lord was with us this day, and drove the devil from the sight of righteous men." The Crusaders cheered again, louder. As Friar Bertrand continued his litany, Sir Cuthbert stepped back into the tent. He approached his steward and said, "Give the men an extra tot of brandy tonight, or they will never rest." "But is that wise?" the steward asked. "We must rise before dawn. If we should delay further, that barbarian horde shall surely—" "We've lost those jackals," Sir Cuthbert snapped. "We could wander these hills for weeks and not find their trail. The filthy barbarians wear armor of fur so that they may run like deer and hide like mice, but it will protect them no more than it did the beast they skinned." He paused and composed himself. "No. Let the men sleep past sunrise. We've pushed them hard enough for 1 week." "Whither do we go after sunrise?" the steward asked. "The barbarian supply camp. We shall seek for it here in these hills. It was doubtless the horde's destination." Don't worry about it. "And we are close, by God, or their demon master would never have risked entering our camp, even by night." "Yes, my lord," the steward replied, "but they will continue to seek thy murder." "Aye, my retinue will protect me if God wills it. Now fetch the men their brandy. Tomorrow we scout these hills. I want the men full of vigor when we find the barbarian camp." "It shall be so," the steward nodded, turning to leave. Sir Cuthbert glanced at Christoph. "Who is this boy?" he snapped at the steward. "The very one who smote the demon and drove him from this tent." Cuthbert studied Christoph a moment, and then motioned him to approach. Christoph stepped forward, trying to conceal the trembling in his knees. He had never been this close to the great crusader before. Christoph fumbled as he clumsily sheathed his sword and knelt. "What is your name, boy?" asked Sir Cuthbert. "Christoph Romuald, of St. Clair." "Thou art a brave lad and true, Christoph of St. Clair. Dost thou love God?" "Aye, my liege." "Seek ye salvation of thy sinner's soul?" "With all my heart, my liege." "Art thou prepared to die for the kingdom of God?" "Aye, my liege." "No longer shalt thou fight upon the line. Thou shalt join my retinue and smite all who would kill me." Christoph felt lightheaded, almost giddy. "I obey, my liege," he said breathlessly. "Thou hast cleft the devil's skull in twain. and lived to boast of it. Kristoff nodded slowly. God has smiled upon thee. He spared thee from certain death, because he has conceived a higher purpose for thee. Therefore, fear not in battle, but give the devil his due, for thou art blessed. Aye, Kristoff replied, though he was far from reassured. Kristoff slept deeply that night, dragged under by weariness and wine. For the first time, the hateful hollow eyes of the dead boar and the dead barbarian no longer haunted him. Instead, all he could see were the hateful living eyes of a dead man. I find that story quite evocative and fitting for the themes present in Vampire the Masquerade, carrying over to this video game. Interpretation based upon the world of darkness. Got a bit about how to play the game with various controls and movement and how to attack. Note that some of the controls do change between the official release and version 1.1. Some extra hotkeys are added. About how to use your disciplines, controlling the coterie, your party of vampires. The game makes no secret that you're gonna be playing a vampire. Talking about blood and how deeply it matters for vampires, and frenzying, because vampires are monsters possessed of an inner beast. And there is a bar, which will be increasing as we take damage, and if that tops out, we snap and lose control over the character, and the character begins to make very bad decisions. Almost always very bad decisions. Awakening, which can be a move, a power we use to rise our characters from torpor, and saving the game, which, as you can read here in the instruction manual, is how the game was originally designed. You get an autosave, or you click on a cross/onk. There's no ability to just press escape and go save the game. Various hotkeys, keyboard controls, let's see what I remember. I got the hold down Z part for switching to first-person view. That's pretty good. Main menu, various options and what have you. Coterie AI options for using various things. Your mileage will vary on that. Characters possessing presence powers, if memory serves, seem to be a bit lax on what they will do, even if you tell them what to do. Our main game screen. Pay no attention to what is being fired at, or with, or upon, in the screenshots on the left. The game also makes, like the instruction manual makes no secret, that there will be a time transition, as informing you in advance this will be occurring. The descriptions about how the user interface will look, and displaying, and your inventory, and how that will be. I don't think there's a convenient hotkey to, lob items between, I can't, select an item and while holding it, press, 1, 2, or 3 to put it in different, coterie members' inventories. Purchase window, conversation boxing, advancement screen. Between completing quests in the single-player chronicle, because that's what it is, we're telling a vampire story here. The Chronicle of Kristoff in his crusade for redemption? Question mark? On the experience points that we'll be earning and how we'll advance. When you're playing in multiplayer, the storyteller has access to a screen like this to provide you experience points as you proceed in your multiplayer storytelling. Now we get some general notes about combat. You have bashing, lethal, and aggravated damage. Bashing, anyone can use their stamina to resist that. Stamina is used to reduce the damage you take. Lethal, mortals cannot use stamina to resist that. If you strike at me... Excuse me, interruption. Where was I? If you strike at me with a sword, I can't use stamina to resist that. That's lethal damage to me. You strike at me with a quarterstaff, I can use stamina to resist that. And then you have aggravated damage, like fire, sunlight. So if I'm a vampire and you put a lighter on my finger, I can't use stamina to resist that. Tragic. And then you have various types of aggravated damage: electrical, cold, fire, sunlight, and holy. We'll go a bit about the soaking damage as well as armor. There's not like detailed like combat calculation math available in the instruction manual, but that's nothing new. And I personally don't know exactly how the formulae work within the confines of the video game. Also talks about fortitude, a specialized discipline vampires can acquire, which permits the soaking of aggravated damage. Very useful, that. The virtues of that are extolled in the tabletop game across editions. Any vampire who's lived any length of time has at least one dot of fortitude. Like, elders, man, just one of those sorts of things. And then staking up there. You impale a vampire in the heart with implements of wood, they're rendered completely immobile until the stake is removed. In this video game, though, vampires, if given enough time, can expel that stake from their body. Compared to, say, Vampire, like 5th edition, V5, if you are staked, barring a few specific discipline moves, you're fucked. Until that stake is removed, you are paralyzed completely. You have to spend like superficial willpower to like even move your eyes or twitch a finger. Yeah. And coterie combat AI. Yeah, there's a reasonable argument to running through this game with only one character. There's a reasonable argument to going through this game by avoiding as many combat situations as possible. It's rough. It's good news. Your adversaries also have rough combat AI, but the thing about that is that you're the one who is in all the encounters, not your enemies. Moving along, description of the character traits: strength, influencing the amount of damage inflicted by melee weapons. Dexterity influences your to-hit rate, chance of making a critical hit. Stamina, used for damage soaking. Perception is a shrug. I wouldn't say what specifically that would impact as it regards to gameplay. Probably some power requirements minimum. Intelligence definitely has a lot of power requirements. And wits does as well, though not to the extent as much as intelligence. Having higher wits does slow the rate at which you become frenzy, which is pretty nice. Charisma leans in with like dominate and presence, those other like mental disciplines. Manipulation goes into that, but also influences shop prices, and appearance influences very least the presence discipline. Rank is treated loosely given like the texture of the video game. Blood pool, how much blood you can have like stored in your body at once. Health, your physical condition for perfect health to torpor, or even final death. Frenzy rating and humanity rating. We won't have to worry too much about a humanity rating, he says, chuckling, because no, that's one of the core themes of Vampire the Masquerade: the struggle to retain your humanity, and sometimes you fail that. Human characters, mortal characters who are available in multiplayer games, differ from the kindred. And then the disciplines, from our common disciplines, feeding, through Walk the Abyss all the way at the end of common disciplines. If you want to be able to town portal, you gotta have points in all those things to get to town portal. There's not even really a town portal, it's a haven portal. We have animalism, auspex, celerity, demontation, which I don't believe is demonstrated at all in any capacity within the single-player chronicle. Dominate, fortitude, mortis, obfuscate, potence, presence, protein, Rhodian. And then your varying categories of thaumaturgy, blood magic, lure of flames, hands of destruction. Don't think we'll be seeing much of that from me this run. And blood rituals. We also have faith, which we definitely won't be seeing any of. You can put Kristoff's starting experience points, well, and like the starting segments, into a faith characteristic. My brother and I both did that in our first playthroughs, and we probably regretted it, because it's really not the story we're telling here. Faith is for humans. This is really like just put in here just so you know what to possibly expect for multiplayer chronicles. I'm pretty sure a few adversaries in the single player chronicle. Anyway, we got enemies. We're going to be fighting ass loads of ghouls. We have some Knights of St. John. Don't let them witness illegal acts. Zlakta? Zlakta? Fuck, I forgot how Ineska pronounced it. I'm going to attempt to stick with the pronunciations that the game does, even if, say, they are not the pronunciations that are used in current vampire gameplay. See Bruja. We'll be hearing the word Zlakta, though, about 34 more times. Probably closer to like 68 more times. Ghoul rats, Zombu, Cappadocian kindred in the Dark Ages, homunculi, fucking gargoyles, demon hounds, werewolves, the Primisal revenants, Society of Leopold members, ghoul spiders, great. Wraiths, joy, vipers, ghoul alligators, question mark, and then we just, moving on with like various equipment. We have weapons. Obviously, those are going to be changing between medieval and modern times. And other equipment. Daily items, rings and jewelry, potions and vials. You can slam down and have a drink. Scrolls, discipline tomes. Incredibly rare, but they contain the canine wisdom of the ages. Unlocking discipline groups for a specific character who reads the tome. And artifacts, which we may uncover over the course of gameplay. Chapter 5 goes into the multiplayer and storytelling experience, which I mentioned in the, episode 1. Is cool. I dabbled with it a bit. Explored, both of the chronicles. Yeah. Really neat. Talks about starting clan disciplines, what it is like when you create a character, how you join up with other people to play. And you could play as a vampire, a human, or a ghoul. This allows for a good deal of flexibility with the stories you want to tell using this system. If, say, you can't get together in the year of our Lord 2000 around a table and play Vampire the Masquerade, this offers a facility to do that. Of course, there were other avenues, even back then, for playing Vampire the Masquerade. MUDs, post-by-post forums, creating your own room, various moderation settings for the storyteller, how to play and storytell within the multiplayer game, and the controls for doing things and emoting, a rolling dice, how the storyteller might teleport their fucking head, like it's a giant ghostly head, around the board. There's controls. Please note, the use of the Embrace and Codex is up to the user discretion and risk. Help with the editor is not supported by Activision customer support. Thank you. The Nod Engine, creating your own multiplayer chronicle. Good stuff, good stuff. Chapter 6 goes into the details of the world of darkness itself to help you immerse yourself within the setting and situation as you sit down to play this video game. The world of Vampire the Masquerade is not our own, though it is close enough for fearsome discomfort. The degrees to which depend on the group you're playing with and the editions, as portrayals have certainly changed over the various editions. Rather, the world inhabited by vampires is like ours, but through a looking glass, darkly. Evil is palpable and ubiquitous in this world. The final nights are upon us, and the whole planet teeters on a razor's edge of tension. It is a world of darkness. Yeah, so it's like the real world we'll inhabit. Much like, those stories, comic books about superheroes. They're, like, based, adjacent. There's similarities, but with other themes. World of Darkness, Vampire the Masquerade, more specifically, has stories to explore and to tell, which have this undercurrent of horror. You have the varying generations of vampires, which we're going to eventually become an elder at some point. Actually, in multiple ways. I digress. We're going to be getting, like, promotions of titles, even though they don't actually apply, because it's, like, the game's way of denoting, like, experience point earnages. Earnages, yes. The various clans and the sects, the Camarilla and the Sabbat, strongly opposed to each other, competing philosophies for how to handle mortals and how to handle kindred in society. The beast and humanity, what this hunger and addiction and, like, perpetual violent drive does to a vampire. The lexicon. We pause, take a look about what's going on there. Learn about the masquerade, the jihad. Bits about the Dark Ages. My heater wanting to make an appearance. Thank you so much, heater. But I'm going to upset the unit by promptly turning it back off. How long has this video been going? Whew. I suppose that story did take 19 minutes. Let's speed this up here. Descriptions of how Cainites and society, like, function within, like, the dark medieval times of the castes and how vampires exert their influence upon that situation. Peasants, clergy, Archbishop Giza right there. I do like the art in this instruction manual. It's good stuff. It's translated well in the scanned PDF. The geography, oh, again, yummy art. And then the modern knights. Gothic punk is perhaps the best way to describe the physical nature of the modern world of darkness. The environment is a clashing mix of styles and influences, and the tension caused by the juxtaposition of ethnicities, social classes, and subcultures makes the world a vibrant, albeit dangerous, place. Evolution of the sex into the Camarilla, the Camarilla, and the Sabbat. The Sabbat have faded. I can't say, like, they faded into the background, but they're, like, in, like, V5, they're off, like, fighting the fucking antediluvians or something. Like, they're trying to find them, to destroy them, and so they've pulled back from all their other power centers and wars that they were having elsewhere in the world to be, like, in, like, the Middle East, Asia, like, northeastern Africa, around there. The Nkanu, the Anarchs. Anarchs end up having more of a focus in the latest edition of Vampire the Masquerade. Gehenna, the end times, the final nights. Total, utter panic, thanks to prophecy, and a bunch of incredibly ancient vampires losing their fucking shit. Great, wonderful, awesome. The state of the world, it's a crap sack world. It's not great. Can't be great. Not for the wretched stories you're looking to tell in Vampire. And the clans themselves, they are definitely portrayed differently across the editions. So when you look at the manual and you reflect on some of the names and the descriptions attached to them, if you're familiar with, like, maybe more modern Vampire, how it is, like, under Paradox, because Paradox, like, purchased White Wolf Publishing and then dissolved White Wolf Publishing. Like, White Wolf is no longer like any sort of independent entity. Just, reflect. Differences of depiction. Assamites, Diabloris, the Bruja, the ultimate scholar warriors, the Cappadocians, the Clan of Death, the Giovanni, so close together. The followers of Set, in V5, they have rebranded themselves to the Ministry, though one of the offhand names that is, like, referred to, like a minister, it says a Setite. The Assamites are referred to as, like a two-word phrase, like a B, an H, bunk, that. And they have a different portrayal, for sure. The Gangrel, lonely nomadic night prowlers, animals. La Sombra, firm believers in divine right. So many, folks are spooked by La Sombra. They are bastards to fight. And K-Knights who have done so, keep that in mind. They have a great and potent reputation. It's a different great and potent reputation that the Malkavians have, who, like, V5 has leaned into, like, portraying Malkavians with differently. Like, you don't have to go into, like, severe disorders. Like, you could lean more into, like, one of the examples, like, is used in the, I think, Player's Companion Guide or whatever that came out in 2023 was, someone like a Deadpool you could do instead of someone, like, struggling with crippling, like, post-traumatic stress disorder or a dissociative identity disorder, schizophrenia, something that can be more comfortable for players at the table to be around as they indulge in their macabre escapism, and maybe something easier or more, like, grimly humorous than, well, anyway. Nosferatu, yeah, they wear their bane, the curse of their clan, on their flesh. Some get it worse than others, but it's a transformation, a very painful transformation that happens after they are embraced. The Ravnos, definitely are described different. We'll let you pause on this one and reflect on that description, if you'd like. The Toreador, the roses, how lovely and sublime it all is. The Tremere, once a cabal of mortal sorcerers who kind of winged themselves into this whole undeadness through magic ritual, and now they're here. And in, like, the Dark Ages, when magic is still strong, modern times, when magic is less strong, the reputation is really the same. Compelling plot points in Vampire the Masquerade can end up being like, oh, the Tremere are doing shit, or we think the Tremere are doing shit. It's great times. The Tzimisce, yep. I do enjoy this flesh crafting clan. That really appeals to my sensibilities and the stories that I wanna tell. And the Ouroboros, or Ouroboros, as I called it for so many years. The Ventru, they're there. The princes and knights and kings just want to lead everyone. We're the best. We're the coolest. Thanks. And then that's that. We have our credits, and then the final few pages are like an appendix added by GOG. Thanks. Or because of however this game ended up getting onto GOG. That's that. That is our bonus cruise through the instruction manual. Oh, what an adventure. What a ride it was. And could have spent more time on it, but listen, man, I got things to do, right? We got monsters to dispatch in the future. I gotta, stretch my muscles, crack my bones, limber up, man. Imagine holding a broadsword and a torch and delving into darkness, because before this game is through, so many vampires will have met the final death. Oh, many! It is obscene. You think about, like, the population of how many vampires are, like, in any given, like, city or state or, like, geopolitical region, and we are just gonna go chopping and smashing and blasting in so many ways. Unless I choose to start avoiding combat, and we gotta soak it in so I can really gnash my teeth at it. So many fucking vampires are gonna die. It's kind of ridiculous. Kristoff is such a fucking badass. And maybe you'll see that over the course of this video game. Take care, everyone. It is a world of darkness, and it's time to glower and or glower away.